Have you ever wondered why some legends spend their whole lives shining, yet leave behind shadows far darker than anyone could imagine? Michael Jackson was one of those rare figures, an artist who seemed carved out of stardust and sorrow, brilliance and burden. To the world, he was a spectacle of motion, a miracle of sound. But beneath that glittering light lived a man shaped by forces older than fame itself: racial pressure, generational wounds, public betrayal, and the impossible demand to be more than human. His secrets weren't just hidden, they were guarded like fragile artifacts, too heavy for one person to carry, yet too dangerous to let the world touch. Imagine standing at the edge of a life where every breath becomes news, every mistake becomes myth, and every vulnerability becomes a weapon. Michael walked that line from childhood. And the tragic truth is this: some secrets didn't follow him because he wanted them. They followed him because the world refused to see the boy behind the brilliance, the man behind the legend, the human behind the icon. He learned early that when millions are watching, silence becomes armor, and privacy becomes the last territory worth defending. As he rose, the world saw only the spectacle, never the cost. They saw a young black boy breaking through racial barriers no one dared to admit existed. They saw a teenager transforming pop culture before he even understood his own adulthood. And later, they saw a man who seemed to be constantly reinventing himself, unaware that reinvention was not a choice but a survival tactic. When you grow up with the world looking through you instead of at you, reinvention becomes a form of escape. The first secret he carried was the weight of being chosen too early. Children in the spotlight are never really children. Michael became a symbol before he became a person. He was expected to be perfect, grateful, radiant. But symbols are not allowed to hurt. They are not allowed to question. They are not allowed to slow down. You might think you understand that pressure, but imagine millions of eyes turning every mistake into prophecy, every insecurity into scandal. That is the pressure of being a black child star in a world that both adores and fears your brilliance. The second secret was the loneliness that fame carves into the soul. Despite the crowds, despite the applause, despite the history-making triumphs, Michael lived in a kind of isolation few can comprehend. The higher he rose, the smaller his circle became. Trust became currency. Betrayal became routine. If you've ever felt alone in a crowded room, multiply that by an entire lifetime lived under scrutiny. His connections were fragile because the world he lived in rewarded drama more than truth, spectacle more than sincerity. But the third secret was the most unsettling: the way he carried the burden of black identity in an industry that demanded assimilation while punishing authenticity. To survive in white-dominated Hollywood, he had to become what the world found acceptable: magical, universal, unthreatening. The industry wanted his talent, but never his truth. And so he learned to hide. Beauty became his shield, art became his confession, and transformation became his rebellion. Look closely at his evolution, not as a tabloid story, but as a coded message from a man fighting to control his own reflection. There was also a secret he kept about pain. Michael lived inside a body that endured more than applause could heal. From childhood rehearsals to adult injuries, from perfectionism to overwork, from emotional wounds to physical scars, pain became his companion. And when pain becomes normal, silence becomes necessary. You don't tell the world where it hurts when the world is the one pressing on the bruise. Yet the most profound secret wasn't something he hid. It was something hidden from him. Even in his final years, he didn't fully understand how deeply people needed him, how many saw themselves in his contradictions, how many were shaped by his courage to be extraordinary in a world that wanted him ordinary. Michael wasn't just performing, he was carrying a cultural inheritance, whether he knew it or not. And the world wasn't ready to admit how much it relied on him to make sense of its own fractures around race, trauma, fame, fear, and longing. His life became a mirror, and the truth is, most people weren't ready to see themselves reflected in it. Even after decades of unparalleled success, Michael Jackson's existence was a constant negotiation with reality and perception. To outsiders, he was flawless, an ethereal performer who defied gravity, both literally and metaphorically. But perfection is rarely kind, And for him, it was a cage gilded in adoration and expectation. Every moonwalk, every glittering glove, every iconic vocal riff was also a reminder of the life he had been forced to live. One where spontaneity, privacy, and innocence were luxuries stripped away at birth. Have you ever wondered what it does to a soul to grow up as the property of public obsession rather than the steward of your own life? The answer lies in his secrets, buried not because he wanted to deceive, but because the world demanded silence. One of those secrets was his struggle with identity. Michael was a black man in an industry and society that simultaneously elevated him and tried to contain him. His racial identity was commodified, dissected, and criticized, yet it remained central to his artistry. You might see it in the way he blended soul, pop, rock, and dance, a synthesis of cultures, histories, and personal experience. But the press often chose spectacle over substance, always asking the wrong questions, missing the nuances of his genius. He became a canvas upon which society projected its own fears and fascinations. The innocence they wanted, the novelty they craved, and the perfection they could never embody themselves. How much pressure can one person endure when their very existence becomes a moral, cultural, and financial instrument? Then came the betrayal, the hidden betrayals by those closest to him. Managers, lawyers, and even friends often saw the king of pop not as a human being, but as a machine capable of generating endless revenue. Trust for Michael was a fragile and dangerous currency. Contracts were twisted, promises broken, and confidences exploited. It wasn't merely exploitation, it was a systemic silencing, the erasure of his agency. And you, as the observer, must ask yourself, how does a man preserve his soul when the very people he relies on are complicit in its exploitation? Michael learned that loyalty was often performative, friendship conditional, and love transactional. Each betrayal became a thread in the fabric of his caution, the reason he carried certain truths alone, shielded from public view. Yet he also wrestled with fame itself, the forced secret that defined his existence. Celebrity is seductive but dangerous, particularly for black artists navigating a predominantly white industry. Michael's fame made him untouchable yet hyper-visible, revered yet scrutinized. Every headline, every paparazzi flash, every tabloid rumor chipped away at the private self he desperately sought to preserve. Fame became a paradoxical prison. It gave him power but simultaneously dictated his boundaries. And through it all, he performed, not only for applause but as a survival mechanism. You might think performance is easy when millions cheer, but imagine dancing on a global stage while the world silently catalogs your vulnerabilities and exploits them for entertainment. The fifth secret was the delicate balance between resilience and vulnerability. Michael's ability to endure, to continue creating art amid relentless scrutiny, was itself extraordinary. He built fortresses of innovation and imagination. Neverland, elaborate tours, music videos that redefined an entire medium to protect what few could see, the fragile human beneath the stardom. And yet, even these fortresses could not shield him from the scrutiny of society, from legal battles, from rumors, and from the ghosts of his childhood. His resilience was a testament to his genius and a reflection of the isolation he endured. If you have ever wondered how a man can withstand decades of pressure, adulation, and criticism, look to his art, his life, and the guarded spaces of his heart. Finally, there is the secret of his legacy, the truth that even in death, he carries both adoration and controversy. Michael Jackson is remembered not only for his musical genius, but also for the mysteries, accusations, and contradictions that define his life story. But these complexities do not diminish his impact. They magnify it. They remind us that human greatness is never simple, and that the weight of being extraordinary comes with burdens few can comprehend. He was a mirror of society's fascination with brilliance and its fear of vulnerability. And in that reflection, we see our own struggles with identity, trust, and resilience. Every secret Michael carried was a story, a lesson, a challenge. And as you reflect on them, consider this. The man behind the legend was both larger than life and achingly human, navigating the impossible, holding truths too heavy to share. yet leaving us a legacy so profound that it continues to haunt, inspire, and demand reflection. The final chapter of Michael Jackson's Hidden Truths is a study in contradictions, an intricate tapestry of light and shadow woven across decades. Even as the world celebrated his music, he grappled with an existence few could understand. The boy who once danced in the spotlight of Motown, whose youthful smile seemed untouchable, had become a man living in the tension between myth and mortality. He was adored by millions, yet profoundly isolated, revered for his talent, yet judged for his humanity. Have you ever noticed how the brightest stars often cast the darkest shadows? Michael's shadow was a mosaic of fear, resilience, and unwavering creativity, a testament to a life lived under the microscope of public obsession. One of the most poignant of his final secrets was his relationship with love and intimacy. Michael longed for connection, yet trust was a luxury he could barely afford. Childhood trauma, fame, and betrayal had created invisible barriers, walls built not from arrogance but from necessity. Every gesture of affection had to be measured, every friendship scrutinized, every bond tested. Imagine living in a world where your very touch could be interpreted as scandal, your smile dissected, and your sincerity doubted. Michael's isolation was not merely physical, it was emotional, a condition compounded by fame, race, and the societal expectations that demanded he embody perfection at all times. He loved deeply, yet guardedly, a paradox that few understood and fewer respected. The pressure of expectation was another relentless secret. As the king of pop, he bore the weight of history, culture, and identity on his shoulders. Michael represented more than his own ambition. He was a symbol of Black excellence, a beacon of possibility, and a target for scrutiny. Every performance, every album, every gesture was scrutinized not just for artistry, but for its perceived cultural significance. Failure was unthinkable, and yet human frailty ensured it was inevitable. Can you imagine the tension of balancing artistry with representation, creativity with expectation, personal truth with public myth? Michael's genius was inseparable from this struggle, his every success shadowed by the immense responsibility he carried. Another hidden truth was his visionary mind. Michael Jackson saw beyond the limitations of the present, crafting music, videos, and performances that anticipated cultural shifts decades ahead. Thriller was more than a record, it was a cinematic revolution. Moonwalk was not just dance, it was defiance of gravity, metaphor, and stereotype. But such innovation comes at a cost: isolation, obsession, and a relentless pursuit of ideals few can comprehend. Michael's creativity was both a gift and a burden, a reflection of his internal battle to reconcile reality with vision. And in that tension, he left behind work that is not only timeless, but haunting, because it captures the mind of a man perpetually ahead of his world. Finally, perhaps the deepest secret was Michael's enduring fragility, hidden beneath layers of fame and spectacle. Despite unimaginable wealth, success, and global adoration, he remained profoundly vulnerable. Vulnerable to betrayal, to rumor, to exploitation, to the relentless gaze of a world that demanded both perfection and scandal. And yet, his fragility did not define him, his resilience did. He persevered, creating art that continues to resonate, influencing generations, and leaving a legacy that both challenges and inspires. You might ask yourself, can you separate the man from the myth, the talent from the tragedy? Michael forces us to confront that tension, reminding us that brilliance often coexists with vulnerability, and that the greatest icons carry burdens the rest of us can barely imagine. In the end, Michael Jackson's secrets are not merely sensational, they are instructive. They tell a story of a human being navigating extremes, the extremity of fame, the extremity of expectation, the extremity of public scrutiny. They reveal a life defined by contradictions, yet marked by beauty, resilience, and artistry that transcends time. He was more than a performer. He was a mirror reflecting society's obsession with perfection and its discomfort with humanity. And in that reflection, we are compelled to ask difficult questions about fame, about race, about trust, about legacy. Michael's life was never simple, and neither are the truths he carried. Legends may fall, but their truth always rises.